Welcome back to everyone to the fourth session of the second day of the FoodTreX. Welcome back after our half an hour break. So let's move on. We are talking about sustainability, agritourism, and I would like to introduce you and invite Brooke Hansen from University of South Florida, US, for her speech entitled Growing Sustainability Agritourism in Florida, a Build Back Better Call to Action. Thank you, Brooke, for being here, and I'll leave you the speech and also the screen.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here today. Very excited to share some of the work that we're doing here in the state of Florida. I'll just get my PowerPoint up and running here. So my initial title was Building Back Better. And in a recent forum that we had with the International Conference on Sustainable Development, Dr. Wendy Purcell of Harvard said, why do we keep saying build back better? We don't want to go back. We want to go forward. So I've just crossed that out and decided that we're going to grow sustainable agritourism in Florida by building forward better call to action. So thanks, Dr. Purcell, for that little note. So I am the Director of Sustainable Tourism at the University of South Florida, one of the two sustainable tourism programs that we have in the state of Florida. The other is down at Florida International University with my friend, Dr. John Bushman. I'm also the director of the SDG Action Alliance at USF, where we promote all things SDGs because we want to see sustainable development in the world. So let me get right into our subject matter for today and how I came to do the work that I do researching agritourism. I'm an anthropologist, so you're going to hear a story today. You're going to hear my story moving through many, many agritourism spaces over the course of about 25 years. And so as a typical social science researcher, I engage a number of different methodologies, including participatory action research, applied research, and my whole existence as a scholar, a teacher, a researcher, and an enthusiast of sustainability weaves its way through my work. I am a tour curator. I led tours in Hawaii for over 15 years, focused on sustainability, food tourism, revitalization of indigenous landscapes, and much more. And I also helped to inaugurate the first annual Hawaii International Ecotourism Symposium in Hilo, Hawaii in 2016. And I was one of the founders of the first Hilo Cacao and Chocolate Festival in 2018. And there's my friend, Tom Menendez, who is a great mentor, collaborator, and teacher of agritourism in the state of Florida. And I was able to follow Tom in his process of getting his farm tour officially recognized according to the statutes in Hawaii County. And we'll talk some more about that. And here's the course I developed for the College of Agriculture at the University of Hawaii on agricultural and food tourism in 2017, where I was able to take my entire class as we went on site visits to various agritourism operations to see how they were doing what they were doing, what the impediments were, and what their hopes were for the future of agritourism. And so here are some shots of my class as we were out doing our work off at vanilla farms in Hawaii. And I mentioned this Hawaii backdrop because this is the framework that I brought with me here to Florida, assuming that we could jump right into spice agribusiness and spice agritourism. And I came to discover a little bit of a different scenario here in the state of Florida. So we'll get to that in a few moments. But here we are at the vanilla farm, looking at production methods and learning about value-added products, and also learning about the business aspects of agritourism and how much money comes from the tours, how much from the products. Very important details to understand. And here's another class trip to Ginger Ridge Farm in Hawaii. And this happened to be one of the few organic ginger farms on the Big Island of Hawaii. So we wanted to understand those aspects too of sustainable and regenerative agriculture. And as you can see, it's really rough work and the students hate it. And here we are at OK Farms, which turned out to be a really important exemplar in our work exploring agritourism. So of course, as usual, we do the tour, we hear the farmer's story, we hear their challenges, hopes, and aspirations. We see their products, we look at their farming methods, we talk about their business plans. And OK Farms had a real special asset. They decided to plant spice trees many years ago. So they had clove and nutmeg and so many other kinds of spice trees. I was pretty excited about that and encouraged them to develop spice tours and also value added products around those spices. And they already grew coffee there, so they did have some pretty solid value added products. And once we started talking about the spices, I knew we had to go the direction of essential oils. And Troy Keolanui, who is the owner of the farm, and his wife right here, Ala, thought that was a good idea too. Essential oils are one of the best value-added products that you can make because they're very expensive. And if you have the right conditions and you've got your spice trees, you can use the leaves to make essential oils from it. So Ala was inspired. She got a still from Portugal, and my class kind of joined in as we learned how to make essential oils together from all of the different trees at OK Farms. So Ala and I are doing the first run through of her still, making clove hydrosol. So when you run a still, the first product that comes out is a hydrosol. So that's a liquid, filled with just amazing aromatics. And when you skim off the oil on the top of that liquid, that's your essential oil. Extremely expensive to buy clove oil. So Ala was really onto something. And the hydrosols are wonderful too. You can use them for disinfecting, for lots of different things. And so here we are a few years later, and her clove hydrosol is her most popular selling item. So we went from buying the still to learning how to gather the leaves and put it in the still and make the products. Great process. The Hamakua mushroom tour on the Big Island was also very interesting. And at the point we visited, they were making more on their tours than the mushrooms, and they were actually doing quite well with the mushrooms as well. So we want to look at that price point and that variation between the income streams. And while in Hawaii, I was also an Aloha ambassador for our local destination marketing organization, Destination Hilo. So I've been in the tourism business basically in every way that you could be in it. And when I moved to Hawaii, I joined the Hawaii Agritourism Association, and that's how we came to plan the first annual Agritourism Symposium in 2016, which was fantastic. Great learning experience. And then we also inaugurated the first Hilo Cacao Chocolate Festival, which was also amazing, with the East Hawaii Cacao Association. So I've been involved in event planning and, as I said, pretty much every aspect of tourism. And here are a few of the other classes I developed while at University of Hawaii. Here's the one I taught on women farmers. So this will weave into the story a little bit later. And here's the course I taught on spice agribusiness, which was also really about agritourism. And OK Farms became a centerpiece of that course as we follow them in their journey. And was a member of the Hawaii Farmers Union while I was there. They were very regeneratively oriented. And then, oops, a little thing happened called the volcano exploding. I lived very near the volcano. That, followed by a number of devastating hurricanes, pretty much forced me out of Hawaii. And I returned back to my alma mater and former home of Tampa with all of these thoughts, all of this knowledge, all of these relationships, bringing those with me here to see, oh, great, I'll just pick up and pick up where I left off in Hawaii and move forward in Florida. And that didn't quite happen. But here's some of the other research methodologies I employ. I do a lot of participant observation as a social scientist, of course, and I'm really interested in the policy comparisons between agritourism laws in different states, Hawaii versus Florida. Maybe we should back up a little bit. What the heck is agritourism? There are a lot of different definitions out there. If you go to Agritourism World and their website, they have this picture explaining agritourism. Not exactly sure that's my definition of agritourism, but that looks pretty fun right now, don't you think? Drinking a bunch of wine and passing out in the field. All right, we'll add that to the definition. And here's a great graphic by Amorato and Felicetti, just kind of talking about the complexities of agritourism and all of the different stakeholders who might be involved in this supply chain. Tourism itself, of course, is a complicated supply chain, but it even gets more complicated with agritourism. So it's less well defined than food tourism, I think, in many ways. And we have a lot of typologies. Extension is usually a huge part of agritourism. And here we see some definitions and typologies from Rutgers. It's on-farm sales, it's educational tours, it's entertainment, it's outdoor rec. And here's a definition by USDA, seems reasonable enough. Form of commercial enterprise. We've got some entertaining, some education, and generating income for the farm. That's a good basic definition. I like that one. We can work with that one. I just want to give you one other example of a scholarly article doing typologies of agritourism to help you understand how we're trying to tackle this beast and define it. So Philip Hunter and Blackstock, they come up with some criteria for defining agritourism. And their article's from 2010. And at that point, they note there's little agreement on what all of this is. And they say that agritourism, it's not synonymous with rural tourism, because many people were saying that in the literature, it's a subset. But then we encounter a problem because right now we have a lot of urban agriculture tours. In any case, here are their criteria: working farm, degree and manner of contact, and degree of authenticity. And they say this is very rare, so I'm wondering why they included it. But just to the point of, we have many urban agriculture tours now, 9 tours offered at the 20th annual Detroit Tour of Urban Farms and Gardens. So we find these all over the country now. So we can't have a typology that says it's only rural, although of course we have many rural agritourism activities. So here's the typology of Phillips et al. They give you a little flow chart. Is it based on a working farm? Yes, no. Is it passive? Is it active? Are they doing activities with the farmer, et cetera, et cetera? So you can sort of see that. So their typology is interesting, but I don't think it totally works for what we're looking at in Florida. So we will be moving forward to develop some new typologies based on what's happening here. So Florida is a very different beast than Hawaii, that's for sure. Corn mazes with manatees, and it's not corn, it's sorghum. So anyhow, lots of things to explore here. I was surprised at how underdeveloped I thought agritourism was here compared to Hawaii. And just a little snapshot of what's happening here in Florida. You can see we have many, many farms. It's an agricultural state. So why don't we have more agritourism? Why isn't it more organized? When I moved here, I joined the Florida Farm Bureau because I always like to have my finger on the pulse of farmers. And here are some of the research questions I brought with me from my prior work in Hawaii. What are the concerns and aspirations of farmers? How can we encourage more local food production with agritourism? And of course, always interested in inclusion and equity. How can women be more empowered to be part of these movements? Harkening back to my Women as Farmers course that I taught in Hawaii. So if our top 2 industries are tourism and agriculture, why don't we see more interface between the two? So my whole thing is, let's leverage number 1, which is tourism, to support number 2, which is agriculture. And that is indeed my intention now that I live and work here full time. We have many threats to our tourism industry in the state of Florida. Obviously, the global pandemic, and we also have climate change, sea level rise. We're a very vulnerable state, and a lot of our tourist attractions are in the coastal areas. What will happen with 3 feet of sea level rise? A lot. And we have algae blooms and red tide, and many of our tourists cannot stay at our beaches all around the state, especially in the West Coast where I am, because you choke, you get sick, you just cannot be there with all the dead fish. And we have skyrocketing housing costs right now as well. What are our threats to Florida agriculture? Similar things: global pandemic, climate change, sea level rise, aging farmers, lack of adequate income, small and medium farmers going out of business, development gobbling up land, monocropping. Here's a picture of citrus greening, one of the horrible infestations taking out the citrus industry in our state. We need diversification. Anthropologists know this. We've been studying agriculture and food production for a long time. And we could see some declines going on in our ag market. Tomatoes and strawberries. We're the #2 producer of strawberries. So a lot of issues. And I just think by combining the two, we can make some headway here. And something I discovered when I moved here, I assumed Florida would be filled with organic farms and farmers markets. I had previously come from Ithaca, New York, and we had 60 organic farms around little tiny Ithaca, New York. And when I came here, I couldn't really find a farmer's market that had produce. And then found this great newspaper series by Laura Riley called Farm to Fable. And she actually went out and did a systematic study of farmers markets and found there's not a lot of market at the farmers markets in terms of produce. Lots of wind chimes, but not a lot to eat. And I found that to be very puzzling. In a state so heavily invested in agriculture, we export a lot of our food. That's one of our things. Anyhow, there's a graphic from Laura's series there, Bait and Switch. And as I said, I came from Ithaca, New York before Hawaii, and we owned a farm that we collaboratively ran with indigenous peoples. And we went to the Ithaca farmers market and sold produce. I knew a little bit about this world and couldn't find it here. And as we also know, farmers are aging. We're having difficulties getting youth involved. We need to excite them with new income streams like agritourism, and farm income's falling. Climate change is not helping. So COVID gives us a pivotal moment to stop and reflect and perhaps build a sustainable agritourism plan for the state of Florida, for the US, and for the world. We need to diversify our tourism offerings. We got to get people off the beaches. They're choking in a lot of places from dead fish and red tide. We need to diversify. Plus, we don't want over tourism in those places either, even when the environment is healthy. And we need to diversify local food production. This will help us address supply shortages that we saw during the pandemic, food insecurity. It'll help us move away from precarious monocropping. You put all your eggs in one basket and the basket drops, you got no more citrus trees. And we need climate-friendly and resilient agriculture. And we need to increase the number and resiliency of farmers through training programs. It's hard enough to be a farmer, and when you're telling them they have to add on a tour, that's a whole other world, as many of you know, and that requires training and support. And so what is sustainable tourism basically follows the triple bottom line, as I'm sure many of you are well aware of. And what I want to do here in the state of Florida is leverage as many assets and tools as we can. The SDGs, for example, we've got the whole Tourism for Sustainable Development Goals platform. We've got the Sustainable Development Goals that speak specifically to tourism, 8.9, 11.4, and 12B. Sort of have those memorized and can reiterate them in my sleep. Beneficial sustainable tourism, protecting natural and cultural heritage, and developing tools to monitor sustainable tourism. And the UNWTO is another one of our resources to leverage, and they're very much focused on building back better with inclusion, rural sustainable development, and they provide a number of tools and reports. And they're really focusing on food and beverage tourism as focal points for these programs. So that's very important to bring them in. Predictions for expansion of global agritourism are good. So the time is now to move into this whole area. And we know that small US farms have found profit in tourism. We know the numbers, we know the margins for this. And the USDA reports that some farms can gain an average of $25,000 or more in annual income. I've seen a lot more in Hawaii. Tourists want this, and the themes are hot themes right now: heritage, nature, health, and sustainable practices. We have a lot of challenges to agritourism. I saw that in Hawaii. Florida is much more supportive in terms of the rules and regs. But just a brief mention here of Hawaii, very restrictive. At the time I was doing my research there in 2017, only 4 to 5 had applied for the agritourism permit in the county of Hawaii. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Here are some of the restrictions in Hawaii. You have to have a minimum income of $10,000. I mean, most of this stuff is doable, But when it came to ADA compliance and a lot of other things, it became much more difficult to get this done in Hawaii. And the county could inspect at any time. The infraction fines were huge. Hawaii has complicated land tenure systems, and that was an impediment. And people were concerned about FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act. So the county had the most restrictive rules of all the agritourism rules, when compared to state and the Fed. So there were some workarounds there. You could do tours for locals or kama'aina if they were school groups. And so I was trying to work with farmers to, explore that option, but then, volcano blew and then I had to leave. We do have some great research from places like Ag Extension in California about some of the problems and challenges. So we need to work through those in a place like Florida. And here we have the Florida Agritourism Association. We've got a great base to start with. It's a volunteer-run organization. Lena Juarez is the director, but she has other jobs too, so we don't really quite have a full-time director. So this is where we need to focus our efforts right now. And they have a great website, check it out. I'm listed on there as a member and as part of the educational branch. They developed a toolkit, a 70-page toolkit to really help farmers get into what's going on. And here are just some of the things from the toolkit. The law here in Florida is pretty broad and pretty supportive. So you can come back and take a look at all of this. We're getting close on time here. The state really encourages agritourism operations. This is good. We like that. And they're very supportive when it comes to liability, exempting operations from liability. So that's what all that is there. And there's some highlights from the book there. You have to have a sign in order to be an agritourism operation. They help you get the signs. The signs are in Spanish. So I see those at various places. And we've got wonderful mentors here in the state of Florida, like Carl and Diane Frost, who run Kai Kai Farms. And they also hosted the 2018 Slow Food Conference at their farm too. And they're there to give lots of advice on liability, alcohol, starting wedding venues, and the partnerships that they've developed to be very successful as an agritourism operation. And we do need to have our extension offices as part of what's going on. So here it's IFAS in Florida, and they do run occasional training sessions like this one that you see here and this one, but it's sporadic, it's not regular. We need systematic training, and we want to promote sustainable tourism, and that's not often a major theme. And so we want to combine supporting small and medium-sized farms with regenerative agriculture, lift up Florida Agritourism Association to develop a model for the state of Florida. And I just want to mention that the Wales model is an excellent one. And they actually define sustainable agritourism and give people some guidance on carbon offsets and accreditations and things like that. So that's what I'm thinking about in terms of Florida. And where we're ending is right here. Right now, we're getting a group together to apply for the Economic Development Administration Tourism Grant to have a systematic year-long training session in multiple parts of the states for sustainable agritourism focused on minorities and sustainability. FATA currently only has 243 members. Remember the chart? We've got 40,000 farms in the state of Florida. So we need to pull this together. So we've got FIU and UCF and me at USF, and we're going to go for this EDA grant. And we're currently writing that grant right now, and we'll be turning that in December. So stay tuned. And the EDA happens to mandate sustainability, equity, and inclusion. So we're leveraging that, all that we can. And we have a bunch of goals. We're still working on those, and we will create staff positions for technical support and build up FATA. So thank you so much. We only have 5 minutes left. Sorry about that, but 5 minutes for questions, and happy to send the slide deck to anyone who would like. So thank you so much for listening. And there's my daughter who gets pulled into a lot of research at agritourism operations.
Thank you very much, Brooke, for your enriching presentation, especially for me. We have one question from our attendee, from Ronaldo Tavares de Souza. He's asking, regarding financial return, how would you compare the profitability of agritourism farmers versus same size regular farms?
And the answer to that question really varies by where you are, what kind of farm you are, what kind of value added products you have, and your tour pricing. So I've seen everything from tours in Hawaii making more money on the tours than the farm to the tours being about a quarter of the farmer's income. But if you follow the toolkits, if you work with your state organizations or your country organizations, whatever it is, and you really carefully and thoughtfully develop that agritourism operation, you should be able to get a significant portion of the yearly income from those tours, especially because of the pandemic. People want to be outside. People want to know more about where their food comes from. So you've got to leverage all those assets too. Food and especially beverage, always a great idea. So Carl and Diane at Kai Kai Farm, they made sure that they developed relationships with liquor license holders. And so a lot of their farm to table dinners, have lovely wine selections. So whenever you add booze to the mix, it makes it more popular. And I recently did the Mixon Farm tour down in Bradenton, Florida. They're a citrus grove. They're diversifying into bamboo. And the first thing that they do when you get on the tram is they offer you a glass of their specialty wine that's been blended with fruits from the farm. So you want to pull all those elements in, and you should be able to have a successful operation that's very lucrative.
Okay, thank you very much, Brooke. Unfortunately, I need to stop and to finish our session. I know there are many other questions. I'm very sorry that you cannot directly answer, but of course, Eric has sent to all participants your email address because some are also asking for your presentation. So thank you very much, Brooke, for your presentation.
You're welcome.
And see you in a couple of minutes for the next one.
Okay, thank you so much. Glad to be here. And please email me, people. Happy to send out info and the slide deck. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.